everybody, and welcome to the CSS class Backgrounds. In this class, we're going to be looking at some advanced background techniques, and the one that we're going to be looking at is the multiple backgrounds and how we use background size, background origin, and background clip properties. Okay, so I'm going to go right into the code section, and you guys definitely have to code with me to get the experience. But yes, let's go to the code section. So I have here my HTML, and it has my H1 saying multiple backgrounds example, and I have my div with an ID called background. My first H1 has multiple background example, and I have two paragraphs all having the lorem, right? So if I refresh this, I have this example, right? And maybe I do not need this because it's just redundant. Okay, so when I refresh it now, I have just this. Good. So we are trying to put two images on this div element, right? And that is what we are going to do. So guys, we have in here a paper, right? This is like crumpled paper. And then we have a second image, which is a flower, like, yeah, whatever you want to call it. So these are the two that we have. Good. So we are going to use these two and insert them as the background to our div. Good. So let's go back to our HTML, and then I'm gonna go back to my styling, and then we're gonna create or target our ID, which is background, and then now we are going to put in the styling. So we have the background image, which you guys are familiar with, and this time I'm going to set my URL to the flower. So I can just call flower.jpg, right? And then because I'm using two images, I can put a comma and then I have my second URL having paper.jpg. Okay, so that is my background. So if I just refresh this, it looks like a lot of mumbo jumbo, right? So nothing to see because we haven't done much. We just said give this the background. So now what I am going to do is set my background position, right? Because you want to be able to position, nope, not this one, background position, right? And so with the first one, so the first one, because we are dealing with two backgrounds now, two images now, we need to position them individually. So the first one is my flower. I'm gonna put it right bottom, and my second one left top. Okay. So when I refresh this, you can, and when I refresh this, so what is happening is, and the reason why you're only seeing the flower one is that by default it's on repeat. Both of them are on repeat, right? So even though the paper is still is there, the flower is overshadowing it, right? So I said I wanted the flower to be right bottom, right? And I wanted the paper to be top left, but I have to assign the background repeats, right, for each of them so that we can see them individually, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say background repeat because I want to repeat, I don't want to repeat the flower, so it's just a single flower at the bottom left, right? So I'm going to say no repeat. And then the second one, which is the paper, I'm going to say repeat, right? And then I'm going to add some padding to the tag content. Let's say 20 pixels, and that should do it. So now when I refresh it, you see that the image went to the bottom left or right, and then the the paper repeated across board. Good. So that is how we added two images to the same div or element. We could have also used the shorthand instead of having the background image, background position, background repeat. I could have done the same thing, and I'm going to do it down here. I could have just used the shorthand background, and then just set the URL flower dot OK. After that, I'm going to just set the position, which is right bottom, and then I'm going to just set the no repeat. Good. And then I'm going to have my comma, and then I'm just going to have the second one, my URL, and I'm going to set that to paper, or pardon, paper. And then I'm going to set this to left top, and then finally I'm going to set it to repeat. Okay. So I could just use this shortcut, and then let me comment this out so we know it's not. And then when I refresh this, we should still have the same thing. Good. We can also specify the size of our images, that's the background size, right? Uh, and we have to use the background size property to do it, right? And then we have to specify the length in percentages, or we can use whatever to specify it. So we're just gonna take an example. For example, if I wanted to do something like this, add another image, and I'm gonna use URL. I'm gonna still use the flower dot, and I'm gonna say left, and maybe just so we can see this more clearly, I'm gonna leave this as is, and then let us create a new one. So instead, I just just created another div, called it background 2, and just had an image size and a paragraph in there, right? So if I just refresh this is what I have, right? So I am going to create or target that ID, which is background 2, and then outstyle this, right? So let's say I set a border because I just want to show that that property, right? So I have a solid and say red. Okay. Then I'm gonna create a background. I'm gonna add the background to it. Background. I'm gonna say URL. I'm gonna use the same one, the flower, because I want us to compare the gif.jpg. Okay. And then I'm gonna set the background size. The background size, where is it? Nice. I'm gonna set it to 120 pixels, 80 pixels, right here. And then I'm gonna set the background repeat, background repeat. I'm gonna set it to no repeat. And then let's add some padding, 20 pixels. Okay, good. So now when I refresh this now, I see that the size of this is considerably smaller than this, right? So just so we can really tell, I can make this 60 by 40. Oops, not 600, right? And so when I refresh this, you see the size now. So that is what the background size does. What if we wanted to center an image? So create a background that has one image covering the whole background, right? So what you would do is in the style section, you can create an HTML because we want to target the whole of that and then set your background. Nope, the background itself. Set it to the URL you want. In this case, let's say flower. I know the size is considerably small, but we'll use it as this dot jpg. I'm going to set the no repeat because we don't want it to repeat. And then I'm going to center this and I'm going to fix it. Okay. And then one more thing. I'm going to set the background size to cover. Okay. So now I can also target the body and set this color, which is the color of whatever text, to white. Okay. Or let's say, uh, yep, maybe white. Let's see how that will look. Okay, so when I refresh this now, you have the whole page having your flower, right? And the quality is a little diminished because of the size of your image. But yes, and you can see the writing is now white. The fonts is now colored white. Last but not least, we want to look at the background origin property. And what the background origin property specifies is where the background image is positioned. So before we do that, I just want to get rid of this two right here so we can really see what is going on. Okay, so let me refresh this again. Good. So right now we have just these two, which is totally fine. Good. So and with the second one, I am going to just remove this background size here, and then so it's bigger, right? Or just so we know what. Let's say make this 160 by 100. Let's just see how it looks. Okay, okay, that's a little big. So let's say 260 by 160. Okay, so this is just fine. Okay, so now uh what we want to do here is how do we position this using the background origin property. And there are three different values that we are going to be looking at. And what this specifically does is where do we position the image, right? So the three values, and we're going to take a look at them one by one, is the border box, the padding box, and the content box, right? So let's do the first one first, and I'm going to be overriding it so that we know where we are. So I'm going to add the the first one. I'm going to add the background origin, background, the background origin. Okay, and I'm going to set this to the border box, right? So when it's border box, the image starts from the upper left corner of the box, right? So if it's border box, it starts from the upper left corner, right? So when I refresh this, is this the upper left corner? Yes, it is. Good. And so now I'm going to test the second one. So the border box, same background origin, and I'm going to set this to be content box. And when it's the content box, the image starts from the upper left corner of the content, right? So let's refresh this. So it's going to be upper left corner of the contents, right? So that is good, right? And the content has some padding, remember, right? A 20 pixel padding. So that's why you see it like this. Again, just to repeat, with the content box, it starts at the upper left of the content, right? So the content is different from the padding edge. But if I choose the padding box, it starts at the upper left corner of the padding edge. So that's the main edge where the padding starts from, right? So that is the difference. And and so let's do the padding box then, just to see. With the padding box, right, it starts at the upper left corner of the padding edge, right? So right there as it is. And that is the default. So if you don't specify it, the default is the padding box, right? And then the background, when you choose the border box, it starts from the upper left of the border itself, right? So the border itself is where it starts from. So there's just a subtle difference between the border box and the padding box, right? So we have the border box here, we have the padding box, and I'm just going to add the third one. So we have it, we call it the content box. So this is going to be of the content itself. Okay, so that is the background origin property. So guys, thank you for watching this lesson and see you in the next one. Bye.